again that he can use.
Hey, listen, come on. But yeah, that's what I do. Mostly board game stuff. But let's get out of the, now that we're done with what you're doing, let's get into why we're here. Why we've got Sarah here, the expert. Pixar. We're going to kind of go through the movies chronologically. That's what we did with the other 2 Disney episodes. But before that, I want to talk about kind of how Pixar became Pixar and some of the interesting story. Because I watched a film documentary that I encourage everybody to go see. It's called The Pixar Story.
Very good.
It came out, I think it was actually quite a while ago. It was like almost 10 years ago. It was a while ago. But first of all, Pixar is like been touched by everybody important in the world. Like at one point or another, everybody who is anybody in the film creation, innovative industry has had
JJ?
Probably at some point or another. It's probably, but JJ's not, he wasn't around at that time. I'm talking about at that time. You have people like Steve Jobs involved. You have people like Lucas involved. You have people like Walt Disney involved. I mean, it's just like. Wow.
The company.
Talk about involved. Like, you think of like, they were called like super bands back in the day, or like, LeBron, D Wade, and Chris Bosh on this team. Like, the Pixar is the like all-star team of creators at that time. Now granted, the big thing with Pixar is essentially they were constantly doing off the cuff. They didn't know what they were doing half the time. All of this technology was brand new. But the way that this all started, it essentially kind of started with John Lasseter, right? He's the guy, right?
Sarah, how did this begin?
Okay.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, 1971, there's this dude who's an MIT student, and his dream is to have a completely computer animated movie. Now, this is 1971, so that is not in the
Before
picture.
Tron and stuff,
that is not happening anytime
that's
soon.
insane.
So he's trying to sell the idea of it, and eventually, actually, Pixar becomes a computer parts company. And then Lucas, I don't know how the two find each other, but Lucasfilm reaches out to him and says, "Come work with us. Come be in our special effects department." So that's kind of how Pixar was originally owned by Lucasfilm.
Yeah, it was through ILM. Yeah, that's how they originally started. Yeah, they were.
So this guy is, he's the director of like special effects or something like that, specifically for the computer animation department. At the time, John Lasseter was working for Disney, and he was actually fired from Disney Animation.
Which is great.
Yeah, because he didn't listen to, he basically went behind a lot of his supervisors' backs and
probably dress code.
Did something.
Wearing those wacky shirts all the time.
Yeah,
John, be more professional. This is a freaking office.
Yeah, it's Walt
Stop wearing those
Disney.
wacky shirts.
They're animators, please. They roll out of bed like that. But he was actually fired, and
I think the reason he was fired was because he was pushing 3D.
Right, yeah.
And they were like, "No, 2D. Like, what are you doing?"
This is what we do, man.
Yeah, we're Disney, bro. And he's like, "Yeah, but we can innovate." Yeah. So go ahead.
So that was about 1983. So 1983 is when John Lasseter actually joined Pixar, and he became the director of some of the shorts that they were working on at that time. So that's kind of how it started.
First of all, John Lasseter, like, talk about, okay, well, he also came from the California Art Institute, which had like
CalArts, right?
Yeah, like,
which is funded by Disney.
Yeah,
yes.
you have his classmates are all like these, like Brad Bird, Tim Burton. Like, what do you like? Are you kidding me? Like, these
Could
are the people
imagine,
that
that room. I would be like, "Hey guys,"
and they would even talk about like this was the California Art Institute created this kind of program, and they would actually bring the 9 Old Men, which were the original animators from like the classic Disney stuff, and they would come in and teach these kids. Like, think about that resource. Like, it's, because
when you're sponsored by Disney, though, it's like,
no, I know, but I mean, still, like,
groomed.
Yeah, but I always think of like, I had professors that just were picking up a check, you know what I mean? But these people cared. They were teaching them how to, put emotion and create characters that are memorable, and you see it because almost every single person that came out of that college or that program has done absolutely amazing things with inanimate drawings. You know what I mean? Like, have put more emotion than some live action, some of our best actors. So it's really interesting to see how that kind of came about. But then I know with Lucas, they created essentially software, and they were using it. I believe they were using the 3D software with other types of technology. And then Lucas is like, "This isn't making me any money," and he was going through, like, in the documentary they talk about, he was going through a really bad divorce.
Yeah.
And that, women ruin everything. I'm just kidding.
What year is this ish?
This is like the 1980s.
Yeah. And that's when it essentially this division of ILM or Lucasfilms went up for bid. Essentially, he was going to sell it off. And then, of course, who comes through the door but Steve Jobs? Mm-hmm. It's like...
Now, it's just Steve Jobs, not Apple?
No, it was Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs,
Okay.
Apple. Like, this is...
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, did Apple buy this
No,
company?
Steve
or
Jobs. Steve Jobs with
invested
the
in
money
company?
that he
Yeah,
had.
he invested lots and lots of
This
money.
is when Steve Jobs was already out at Apple?
No, this is when he's back for the second time.
Okay.
So he was in, then he was out, then he was back in.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know that for a fact, but I believe it was around that time when he was coming back and forth with Apple. But it's just like, each step of the way, because there's multiple times in this Pixar history that they could have been nobody. They were a failed business, just like 1,000 other failed. But it's like Steve Jobs. Are you kidding me? Like comes in as like, I'd like to invest in your company. I think he bought it for $6 million.
Yeah, it was really low.
$6 million.
Ridiculously low.
But the company was hemorrhaging money big time. They started making commercials. That was like one of their ways to make money. I think Listerine and Tropicana used some of their technology. If you go back and you watch some of those old school commercials, like the straw shoots into the orange. Remember that? And the little straw had a face on it. I'll put up a YouTube clip or something. I'll try to find something silly with that. So they
Pixar commercials.
Yeah, but they were making money. But obviously you have John Lasseter kind of. The thing about John Lasseter too is like he's from Disney. Like after he got fired, the reason he talks about it in the documentary, like at some point he was like, "Oh, people get paid to make cartoons. I want to do that." And he was like, "Whatever I need to do that, I'm going to do that." He worked at the parks, right?
Yeah, John Lasseter was born in Whittier, California, which is not far from Disneyland.
Yeah.
I think he was born like in the 50s. So Disneyland was already open, and it was actually after he saw The Sword and the Stone, I think in 1962 or 3.
Good movie.
And that's when his story is his mother picked him up from the movie theaters, and he looked at her and said, "I want to make cartoons for the rest of my life."
That's so cool. That's
and
so cool.
Growing up, he was always obsessed with Disneyland anyway. So he talks about, visiting. They would go to visit the park, I think, twice a year, which back then was still a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's a huge deal, yeah.
Yeah, so he would always, and he loved Disneyland. He loved to be there. And I think he was there the opening summer that they opened Space Mountain. I know he was a custodial in Tomorrowland.
They talk also, he was his last job, I think, that he had before he started working at the animation studio was being the tour guide for Jungle Tours.
Yeah, he did work on the Jungle Cruise, yes.
So awesome. Jungle Cruise, sorry, yeah.
Jungle Tours.
Whatever. But Jungle Cruise. But it's just cool to see, like, somebody come up and is now, the creative chief officer of Pixar. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a... that doesn't happen anymore. Maybe it does, but I just don't hear about it. So
it just doesn't happen for.
I don't think it does. It's just cool to see someone's like literally their childhood dream come to life, be insanely successful at it. To see the passion that somebody has for something actually, bear fruit in both artistic endeavors as well as financially. I mean, Pixar's what they. So anyway, so back to Steve Jobs has it, buys it for $6 million. They're hemorrhaging money. They're not making the kind of money that they should. Because again, this is back when like computer graphics, like no. And also, I know there was always a big hesitation with a lot of animators back then to work with 3D and
it's pushing them out of a job.
That's what they thought, right? And they're like, no, it works in conjunction. They were working with like, creating a 3D background, and then the foreground is 2D animated, so it has like this weird. It's really weird to go back and watch that stuff because you're just like, that looks awful. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's
just so raw.
Yeah. And back then I'm sure they were just like mind just freaking blown. But of course the thing that's also interesting about how the shorts that they created, I forget it's called Andre and the little bee.
Yeah, I thought it was called like Walter or something. I don't know.
Walter,
it's this little weird looking bee thing. That was kind of like the first short that they had put out, and then the next year it was nominated for an award.
Yeah, the Army Guy one was the first one.
The Tin Soldier?
No, you're talking about the Tin Toy. That's what inspired. Yeah, that was what inspired the Toy Story idea.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But they're making these animated shorts, and like from what I could tell through the documentary, it's like one guy like doing everything, and like it's not just like. It's so strange to me to think like I have an idea, right? I have an idea, which is hard enough, right? Then you have to execute that idea, not through your hand, but through computers that you probably don't really have a great understanding of. It's all brand new. It probably had 1 million bugs in it. You know what I mean? Like, that's impossible. You know what I mean? And like,
Nothing's impossible, David.
oh God, here we go. But they talked about one of the things about the animation through the 3D that was so impressive was movement. They could really create movement, where it was you couldn't do that kind of, transition and things like that with 2D animation. Even the best type of animation couldn't capture that. It felt more fluid. It felt more real. So then, they get a deal with Disney, right? They get a production deal with Disney to make.
Yeah, so that was in 1991 is when they announced that they were going to be working with Disney to create a film, which 4 years later
became
Toy Story.
Toy Story.